Oh, hi. Okay, apparently it worked. Hi, welcome to Mad Medicine with Miss P. I have a pounding headache, so I'm just gonna run through this kind of quickly here. I hope this you can even see this. I know my visual aids are awful, but it's the best you can do when you don't have a camera and you're really not a YouTuber. I'm just putting this out there for y'all. If you like it, great. If you don't, tell me I can stop doing it, and I will. I've been begged for too many years to do this, so I'm doing it, and I hope it helps. Okay, so today we're just going to talk about some blocks, and I drew these freehand, and I'm not an EKG drawer. A doctor, I know a doctor that is. He can freehand any rhythm. He did a whole bunch for me. I even laminated with Scotch tape, and I still have it to this day, and that was literally 17 years ago, to 18 years ago. But he was gifted and so good at rhythms that I learned so much from him. And I learned and even more from the course I had to take at the local hospital when I started working there. And Mary, Tracy, you know who you are. You guys were phenomenal. And I'm going to use the same analogy that you used because it makes perfect sense when we talk about blocks. So when you hear the term block, it simply means there's a block of the electricity flowing from one place to another, generally from the SA node to the AV node or somewhere along the line. And it's really not that tricky. I know rhythms seem very confusing to everybody, and I am by no means a rhythm genius where I can look at one and just determine, unless it's a real basic one, a real common one that we see all the time. There's plenty of rhythms that I have to look at, print out, and show to the other girls I work with, and we come up with something all together, or some of them know right off the bat exactly what it is. I'm not one of those. Unless it's these real basic ones, the normal sinus rhythm with some PVCs or PACs I can recognize pretty easily, but these sometimes take a little while to look at. The Winky Bach or the um, second degree type 1 is often easy to see, and it's really neat when it's textbook. And I even have some, like I said last week, that are printed out from the EKG strips, and they're really basic, really easy to see, very consistent and kind of textbook. But like we talked about last week, your first degree AV block is really just where the distance between this P wave, and it's usually pretty consistent, it doesn't change. It has to be like greater than 0.2 seconds, or I want to say it's like 200 milliseconds. I made some little notes here because a lot of times we can just eyeball it, and if I'm questioning it, I will literally, like I said before, I'll just call up Telly and say, hey, this is the patient I'm looking at, Telly number 5822, can you tell me, is it first degree? And she can measure it. But a lot of times you can eyeball it. It's really distinct. It's very consistent, and you can see this little gap in between the P wave and the QRS. Or if it's on paper, like I have an example here, like you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see the boxes on this paper, where you can see the little red boxes, you may not be able to see them. So if it's greater than one box or five little boxes, see the one big box and the five little boxes in it, if it's greater than that, that's considered a first degree AV block. And there's really nothing wrong with it. It doesn't require treatment. It's asymptomatic. They wouldn't even know. There's nothing you can do about it. You're just kind of, that's who you are, live that way, and it is what it is, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, the second degree type 1, also known as Winky Bach, that is really kind of neat, and this is not a great illustration because, I suck at it, but the P wave is right where it should be, then it gets a little longer, even longer, and then it falls off entirely, and you're missing a QRS here. In fact, I should just kind of do that. So you're kind of missing a QRS, and it literally will, then you'll have another P wave, and and that's what it was. That's kind of what I had there. It should have just been a little bit longer here. So you'll have like a little distance here, and then another P QRS, and it starts all over. So this P wave is where it should be, like that original one, but it gets longer, and then it falls off, and there should be a complex right here, and instead it starts all over with a normal distance from the P wave to the QRS, and that is called second degree type 1, or also known as Winky Bach. And I don't even necessarily know that there's a treatment for that either. It's usually also functioning. It's asymptomatic. It just kind of is that person's anatomy, and there's not much you can do about it. It's very odd that it kind of has that series instead of being consistent all the time, to where that defect is there and that just is what happens. It's weird that it kind of goes in that sort of series of events, but you'll see it from time to time. I guess there's nothing you can do about it. You watch it. If it were to get worse, or God forbid, jump into a third degree, or the complete heart block third degree, then they would maybe put a pacer in or do something about it. But otherwise, you'll just see it from time to time. It's very unique. It's kind of neat to see. Then there's second degree type 2, also called Mobitz. And those are the doctors that discovered it, that initially pinned it. That's all there is to it. Nothing exciting about it. So the P waves are consistent, and they are where they should be in terms of distance to the QRS. But then you'll just, the P wave will fire, and then the QRS or the AV node will not capture that fire. It's kind of like it's just not paying attention. That electricity just kind of bypassed it altogether. And it was like, dude, you missed your mark. And the AV node is like, oh, should I have fired? Oopsies. Okay, I'll get you next time. And then it does, and it just continues on. So when you see a P wave and you're missing a contraction altogether of the ventricles, let's say, that is your second degree type 2. And the way this was described to me, which I think is really cute, makes good sense, is that it's kind of like a marriage that is getting ready to fall apart. And if any of you have lived here, you'll completely understand how easy this is to fall into. It's communication, right? So first, it's kind of like, I kind of think of the wife telling the husband, and he's like, what? And there's that little hesitation. I'm talking to you. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like still following along and still communicating. There's just a little hesitation, an annoying, disrespectful hesitation from the QRS or the ventricles. So the atriums are firing because the SA node told them to, and that's when you get your P wave. And then the ventricles are just a little behind the game. And that's your AV and bundle of his eventually kind of following through. Still there, still working. This is probably like your average marriage, let's just say. Kind of, where we all basically live. Then there's the second degree type 1, where he's not listening more, and then he's not friggin' catching it at all and just completely ignoring you. And that is the beginning of the end, where they're just kind of breaking away. That communication is just not there. It's hesitant. It's seeing how much they can get away with not listening at all. Then you get to your second degree, where, okay, yeah, I'm there. I'm following you. I'm listening. I'm there. And yet I'm not there at all. And just completely ignores you entirely. Significant drop of communication, not responding at all. This is where he is probably seeing someone else. I'm just guessing. Then there's third degree heart block, which we didn't get into before. And there's a kind of couple different descriptions, I would say. This one says that complete AV block, which is, I guess, also known as Adams-Stokes disease. Did not know that. In the AV and bundle of his. So with that, your P wave is... there's kind of no rhyme or reason. It'll be before, it'll be after, there'll be no capture at all. So basically, there is no communication. There's no rhyme or reason. The atriums are firing. The ventricles are firing. They're contracting. The atriums are contracting. The ventricles are contracting. The AV node is firing. The SA node is firing. But there's just no rhyme or reason. This is where they're passing each other in the hall and not talking at all. He's slowly getting the rest of his clothes out of the house, maybe obvious or straight up in boxes, maybe sneaking it out, to his girlfriend's house, whatever's happening. But there's no communication here at all. And that third degree is going to most likely end in total disruption of true cardiac output. And probably death of the marriage, death of the heart. Either way, not good. This needs something. This needs a pacer. This needs some treatment. We need to do something about it. We've got some significant communication deficits to where you are eventually not going to have the correct rhythm needed to sustain life, to have that cardiac output that'll keep you alive. The only one I didn't draw on here, not only because I was running out of room, but also because I had this really great little handout, the one I showed you earlier. This is a junctional rhythm. I don't know that I've ever necessarily seen this. It's not something that, I don't work on cardiac floors, haven't in a really long time. I may have seen it from time to time, but the good description of this is it's usually between 40 and 60 beats. It is regular. The P waves could be inverted, could be absent, could be before or after the QRS. So it's kind of like third degree, but it is regular, and it is between 40 and 60 beats. And it's sustaining to an extent, but it lets you know something is seriously problematic. And if they were to have to increase their heart rate or get active, it may not be sustaining. And like I said, I really haven't seen it enough to tell you about it, but those are the specific explanations or descriptions of junctional. It says the electrical activity originates in the AV node or the bundle of His. So the P waves are kind of, not communicating either. That's when I think maybe she might be seeing someone on the side. That's when the P waves are coming and going as they please. I think she's got a little side piece, I'm assuming anyway. So, and the other thing I really like here is, I think one of the students showed me this, and I don't know if you can see that. This is, I don't know if I can get an angle where you can even see it. This kind of describes how you can define your heart blocks, and I'll read it to you if you can't really get this down. It says, basically you're asking questions. So are there more P waves than QRS? If it's yes, then you say, are the P's and R's regular? If it's yes, then it's second degree type 2, right? The P's are regular. If it's not, then are the R's regular? If it's no, then it's second degree type 1, a Winkie-Bach. And if it's yes, then it's third degree complete heart block, where the R's, the QRS's are regular, but the P's kind of come and go as they please, like we talked about. So I don't know if this helps you at all, and not necessarily that you would have to describe this. If you recognize any of these things, this is a good little handout too. This is where they used to have, I don't know if you can see that. I think it's too glary, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if you can see how glary that is, or I can't get into focus, but this is a little thing I printed out. So I'll look up things on my phone, and then I can screen capture it, and then I'll have it printed out. They used to have that Groove book I told you all about, which was awesome. And now I think free print is just as good. They'll send you like however many prints you want, however many you want to get off your phone. So I did a bunch of these. This is kind of what all that came from. So whenever I see something neat, I want to print it out and keep it with me so I can refer back to it instead of looking through my phone, seeing if I can find it. And I always carried those around. And one of the students sent me that little heart block quiz to where you can determine which it is. But that's all there is to it. I try not to get too involved because this is all I know. This is all I got. I'm not going to pretend to know more. This is the extent, and I don't know that I've even seen a lot of these very often. Winkie-Bach I have seen. It's really neat. It's one of the nurses from the back. They're always like, hey, I got one for you. And when it's a Winkie-Bach, we're like, yay, look, it's textbook. I've seen Mobits from time to time. I've seen first degree. You'll see a lot, and that's more often than you want to see. Also, what I see is a sinus arrhythmia a lot. So it's kind of like your normal, well, I took it off. It's your normal complex and they're regular, and then suddenly they're not. Or a complex entirely is missing. Or there's like this pause or hesitation. Nothing you can do about it. It's just kind of how they are. The PVCs you'll see, I did draw this, a bundle branch block. And I couldn't necessarily tell you if I could draw a left or a right, unless it was like a 12 lead maybe, but it's just where you see this big ugly complex. It's not a PVC. PVCs are big and ugly also, but they don't have a P or a T wave. When you see a P, a QRS, and a T, but that QRS is really wide and ugly, that is a bundle branch block where some portion of the tissue of the heart has died. That kind of lets you know that they've probably had, either from disease or an MI, a loss of blood flow to the portion of that myocardium, that it has died, and now that path through the woods, like we talked about before, that child walking through the path through the woods has to kind of jump over or go around dead tissue. So you'll see that tracing, and like I said, that's all it is. That's electrical tracing. So you'll see that electrical tracing, and it'll be kind of wide and ugly because that electrical activity has to kind of jump over and go around and wide through that dead tissue, and you'll see a complex like that. Again, nothing to do about it. It's just kind of, who they are and what they've had done. And I'll say something like, have you ever had a heart attack? And they're like, no, not that I know of. I'm like, oh, I kind of think you did. And a lot of times we'll get that print out, and it'll say septal infarct or medial sign of infarct or whatever, age undetermined. So we'll say like, yeah, you had an MI. Like, no, I didn't. No, really, you did. Like the EKG is telling us, the electrical rhythm going through the heart is telling you at some point that tissue died, and it is now kind of jumping jumping the shark, and it has to go over that dead tissue to get to the other side to complete the path to create electricity throughout the heart. And that's what happened. You've had tissue die somewhere, so you have this big ugly complex letting us know. And it may not have been from an MI, it could have been from trauma, injury, stabbing, God forbid. It could have been from some sort of disease process, maybe rheumatic fever, anything like that. A portion of that tissue is dead, and now your rhythm through that tissue is going to be different, and that's all there's to it. Nothing you can do about it. So that is all the blocks I got for you. That is the extent of it. Sorry, nothing exciting today. I don't even necessarily have a pet peeve, except my job. My job may be my pet peeve. I got yelled at yesterday by patient's son, who told me, "You don't know what you're doing, and you don't know how to talk to geriatrics." Buddy, I'm not sure who you're talking to, but yeah, I did. I do. I've been doing this for almost 30 years and spent 15 years in a nursing home speaking to geriatrics with students. So I know exactly what I'm doing. But you're rude, obnoxious, cutting me off, and you think because you're a lawyer, you can run the show. That's not really how that works. The good news is, after I kind of laid into him a little bit, he changed his tune real quickly. Not that he would ever apologize. He's probably still going to get complained. I'm just going to complain about me, and I'll end up in my boss's office tomorrow. But I don't. People floor me. I don't know. I'm not in. I'm not in the business of customer service. I'm a licensed professional, and I have enough experience to explain to you things correctly. And if you don't want to hear it, then that's a different story. But it's not going to make things less true. And good God, was that guy nasty and obnoxious. And he was a lawyer and wanted to write down my name. And I'm like, all right, you can write it down all you want, and then I'll tell you what you can do with that piece of paper when it's all done. All right, as always, face your fears, follow your faith, and forget those failures, because there's going to be more to come. That's just kind of how it goes. Okay, love you. Hugs and kisses. See you soon. And this isn't ever going to work correctly.